Come on. I'm actually mildly disappointed. I thought it would be so much louder.
Does WWE have a Triple H problem? Now, I know that a lot of people in the comments will say immediately that WWE has not been the same for a very long time, that 2025 was kind of average. Some bright spots, but some stuff that people will look at and say, this wasn't a very good year. And the entire road to John Cena's retirement has had some ups and downs. It ebbs and flows, some really bright spots, and some moments that left people scratching their heads creatively. And oftentimes, all of the criticism for decisions being made, it boils down to Triple H. People pointing the finger at him and saying that he is the problem. So we're going to look at the closing moments for John Cena's retirement. We're also going to look at a few other things surrounding decisions WWE TKO are making. But I want to talk about the John Cena finish to the match, because this is what seemingly has everybody questioning, which is a good thing. People wanted it to be done one way, a different way. They got what they wanted. They didn't get what they wanted. They loved the finish. They hated it. It's kind of polarizing, which is often what John Cena has been throughout his entire career. So it kind of encapsulates Cena as a character. People saying, this was great, this was the worst thing. Because Triple H is head of creative, there are a lot of reasons why the live crowd at Saturday Night's Main Event booed him, and why wrestling fans point towards him as the main critical figure when things are going bad, or decisions are made and results happen and people are not happy with it. But we'll talk about that in a second. With this finish, John Cena tapped out. He smiled and he tapped out. Some people, again, did enjoy that and they thought that that was appropriate finish and the way to go. Let's first look at the live crowd, the audience that is there. You have the most diehard John Cena fans you will ever see in that arena. It was all for him, from celebrities to fans to content creators to everybody. Everybody was there to support and celebrate Cena, and they did. And I thought WWE did a great job from a production standpoint of making this a big thing. Like, I was weary of it being on Saturday Night's Main Event because it's not a PLE. It should be happening at WrestleMania, and arguably it could have been and should have been for you. I still think that they did a good job from the beginning of the announcement to the retirement itself, giving everybody that entire road to say, hey, this guy is going to retire. So because John Cena tapped out, one side to look at is that live audience. And I think most of them, if not all of them, booed this because it wasn't a satisfying ending. This is where I think part of the crowd is very split. It's just my take on it. I think that part of that live audience is booing this and very angry at the finish. One, they wanted John Cena to win. Do I think he should have won? No. Even Triple H says in the post-show that he will put somebody over, John will, that traditionally you retire, you put somebody else over, and that's it. So me as a fan watching at home in this entire year, I never really thought Cena would win his last match. For the live crowd that's sitting there, I can see why they would have wanted Cena to win. And I do have a big question mark for anybody that was there live seeing it. Were people upset that he lost, or were they more upset in the way in which he lost? For me at home watching, like you maybe, I was more just kind of indifferent and let down by how he lost. The creative decision to have John Cena tap with a smile and just kind of fade for a second. I don't think that that was the very biggest hype moment that you could give John Cena. And let's also remember how much influence Cena himself would have on his finish, on the ending. Doing it the way he wanted, we don't know, but we certainly can assume that Triple H, creative, everybody, and Cena would figure out how they wanted this thing to go. We may never know the real story behind it. Cena may never say anything about it to know if this was all his idea. But I think with the tap out, that's where a big part of the audience are feeling let down, especially the live crowd. Because I think even on TV, the way they did it on the production side, they didn't build the moment well enough in my eyes. I think that they could have let it build to more hype. I think they could have done more to get to that moment if he is going to tap out, versus he goes into a choke and then Cena tries to Super Cena his way out and he gets pulled back in by Gunther and it's over. We can argue or discuss all day long, I'd rather discuss with you all day long about what they could have done, should have done. They should have done it this way, done it this way. I think there's so many avenues you could have gone. And some people would be satisfied by those decisions, and they'd be not satisfied by those decisions. Cena, the character, though, with his whole thing being never give up and actually literally tapping out, I get it, but it also leaves you feeling like Shouldn't he have passed out? Should he have lost by a pinfall? John Cena has no problem losing by pinfall. I do think that however the moment would have been built, I think a little bit more suspense, intensity, and emotion was needed. I look at Flair and HBK for Flair's retirement. The super kick, the moment, camera panning on Shawn and Rick, and creating that moment, and Ric Flair is done, retired. They hug in the ring, they celebrate. It was an ending that was very memorable. A retirement ending. Well, I mean, Rick went on and came back again. You know what I mean. But for WWE's retirement, it was pretty special. And I don't think the crowd there for WrestleMania really thought Rick's gonna win and continue on. What I think worked in that moment, to just use that as an example, was how it was shot and framed and the way they did it. It was Rick being done. It was over. Shawn had to put him out of his misery. I think you could have done something a little bit similar with Gunther here, where maybe he just absolutely annihilates Cena, which he did for most of the match, but for the very ending, maybe they could have done it in a way where Cena is getting just powerbomb, chopped, and clothesline like he did, but in a big aggressive sequence to the very end. All of the blows to him, and having a moment where Cena's maybe on his knees and he does do the smile and then just allows Gunther to take him out one last time for a pinfall. Or to then go and put him in a sleeper and he passes out. But I think the moment could have been done better. Maybe it still would have left the live crowd dissatisfied, but the boos rained upon Mr. Triple H, didn't they? Because when the match ended, the other piece that I found a little bit awkward was, okay, you have Triple H and everybody come down. The crowd had that moment though when Cena lost and he tapped out, that you could hear silence in the arena for a second and it felt like a minute. And that's an amazing emotion to have, an amazing response to get out of a crowd of like 17,000 people. It really reminded me of Taker losing the streak to Brock at WrestleMania, where everybody couldn't believe it for a second that it happened, that it was over. So again, I don't know if people are so shocked that Cena lost that he should have won. I think maybe just the way it was kind of presented with the tap out left people go, oh, that's it? That's all they did? And they're kind of stunned like that's how they did it? Versus something that felt a little bit more of a big crescendo. So then when you have Triple H and HBK and everybody coming out and the crowd is stunned, confused, unhappy, they needed to point blame, and they certainly did for Triple H, and thinking that this is all his fault and going after him. One thing that I thought didn't work was when Cody and Punk got in the ring, they throw the championships on Cena. Cena had this look of like, I'm not into this. It felt awkward that he had to go four corners and hold up the titles, almost as if that's not what Cena wanted, but more of what WWE wanted him to do, of like, hey, let's get our champions in and, you know, crown Cena as a champion final time. It didn't seem like Cena was very into it, but they did it anyways. And Triple H being the only guy to get up on the apron to then talk to Cena to point to the video package at the end, the crowd also just destroyed that. They hated that moment. So the fans booed Triple H because I think they didn't get the result that they were hoping for. So I don't know what the real reason is. You have to ask everybody that's in the arena why they felt it was a bad move, why they felt that the retirement finish was not a good finish, because they put it all on Paul Levesque. I still go back and say, I don't know if it's necessarily that they were upset he lost, but you do have just the ultimate pro Cena crowd there. So is it a scenario where you should have given the fans what they wanted in the arena? I do understand the other side of, let's build Gunther out of this and give him momentum and putting over the next guy, whether it was Gunther or not. The other piece is that it's Gunther. Gunther getting all the heat. There is like reports and videos and all that of people booing Gunther and wanting to chase him out of the arena, and as he gets on his bus, people are just so angry. That's good. In my opinion, that is amazing, because you've given a guy heat, so much heat. Heat to the point where people are trying to find him and track him down after a match. That's stuff they would do in the 70s and 80s. When crowds would go after the heels and they try to find like Roddy Piper to track him down and attack him for real. You don't see that level of heat anymore. The question is, can WWE capitalize on it and move Gunther forward with that momentum? Or are we going to see a different type of heat where it's the representation of bad creative, of bad decisions made by Triple H creative and team for this final match, or the finish to the match? I do think that personally that Gunther getting all this heat with the win over Cena and the crowd pointing their anger and frustration at Gunther it can help him. It can help propel him even higher. If he's going to be this retirement, next level Brock Lesnar 2.0 type of guy where they make him this absolute beast, then great. Because you need that in WWE right now. I need Gunther to go on and win the Rumble and go fight Cody and beat Cody decisively to then, maybe go all the way to SummerSlam potentially and retire Brock Lesnar. And Gunther is that unstoppable guy in the company that nobody can take him down until you have a brand new babyface down the road that can dethrone Gunther. And maybe that is, as we go a year from now, maybe that's what we'll see in retrospect. Maybe not. Maybe it'll all get fumbled and it's total trash. But let's look at Triple H further with this whole situation. I don't think it helped that he got up on the ring apron with the crowd's reaction. I understand that they needed to point to the video package, but Triple H laughing it up with Cena as he was giving him a hug, it came across on television like, we got him, look how mad everybody is, and he was almost basking in it. The argument can be made that any reaction's a good reaction. Cena always would say that over the years, and Vince McMahon as well, that, hey, the crowd's reacting. People are talking. I'm talking. Everybody's talking about this. Why they liked it, why they hated it. So you got to respond. I think it's what you do with it is what matters next. But I don't think Triple H helped himself with the fans, with the hardcore fans, because those that are at the post-show press conference, those that are in the arena, a good amount of them are your hardcore dedicated fans, and crapping on the finish and then kind of crapping on the fans in the post show, I don't really think it helps him, especially as we are closing 2025. Paul Levesque acknowledging the crowd and taunting them essentially that he thought that their reaction, that their boos were going to be bigger. It just doesn't help. I don't see what the point of that is. He could have addressed the crowd in any number of ways. I think he was trying to be a little diplomatic in his conversation on the post-show press conference where he was trying to say, look, Cena's going to go out by putting somebody over. That was always the plan. But there is an arrogance about all of it, like just kind of shut up and take your medicine. And poking the crowd, I don't think in that moment is the right move, because you're also subjecting yourself if you're him, and he probably doesn't give a lick about it. So whatever, it doesn't even matter. But he's positioned himself, or TKO has positioned him in such a way that it's allowing the crowds to really point their finger at him whenever something ain't working. When something goes bad, it's going to stand out even more. For example, he is always on the advertisements, the promotional stuff, the announcements, because he's head of creative and it's Triple H. He's, a legend in the business. He is a marketable character. He has a legacy with WWE and he's in charge. So they make him as the face of it now. He's the new Vince in a way, but he's so heavily involved in everything. He is in the WrestleMania commercials for Vegas. He does all those announcements for WrestleMania, for the Saudi Arabia WrestleMania announcements, for the Saudi Royal Rumble shows, the press conference post shows that they would do where they'd have the media scrums. Levesque is in there and he's talking about the biggest gates and the biggest that, and this is tremendous, but then getting frustrated when people are maybe trying to ask him a real question. That's not just how great everything was, and then taking offense to that. And so because he is always front and center, even during John Cena's retirement, coming out there in Boston to do the Cena introductions, I don't think that was necessary. Why was he there? Why did he need to be a part of that? To get himself over a little bit? Maybe. To stroke the ego? Maybe. But it didn't make much sense. And because this decision or the finish to the Cena match was very polarizing, and his, Triple H's reaction to all of it is very negative, this is where I think it can really bleed, unfortunately, into the next week's Raws and SmackDowns and so on. If he is referenced, if he's shown, people are going to have a bad taste in their mouth, because now they can point and say, he's the reason why the John Cena retirement match didn't end the way you or many people wanted it to. Some people don't care and they go by the John Cena model, which is Cena saying by the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, everybody will forget about it and move on. That's very much the case, right? But this is feeling like a different type of moment where fans are really pointing to him saying, okay, now we fully see that decisions during the course of 2025 have not been great, and this is kind of like the peak of it. One thing I will note is a contrast between Paul Levesque's approach to Vince McMahon. Trust me, there's always going to be comments of like, Vince wouldn't have done it this way, and Vince was better, and Vince is great, and all of this. But the one thing that I will look at is Vince McMahon didn't always put himself front and center like Triple H is. Now, I will say this. It's a different era. you have TKO, and they are marketing and advertising and exposing WWE as a brand all the time, every second, every which way they can. So they use Triple H as the poster boy, as the voice, as the face. Vince, because it was all under him and his decisions, he didn't do that as much. He never did the post-show press scrums. That was not a thing. Interviews with Vince were very infrequent. Moments like this, Hall of Fame speeches, Vince was never there. All the reporting, everything every year is that Vince doesn't like to even be mentioned in the Hall of Fame speeches. It's different approaches. I'm not saying one is better or worse than the other, but it's interesting to see the difference between both people that were in charge of everything. We would always dump on Vince for creative decisions. Why 2019 stands out as a horrible year creatively for the company. Many, many years of things going bad. The Roman Reigns experiment originally just shoving him down everyone's throats and it not working and the fans rejecting it. And Vince was still on TV during that time, right? And the crowds were very vocal about them hating this thing. Decisions, people going over that they didn't feel deserved to be there. But there's very big periods where when Vince was not a character on TV, he wasn't doing all these media rounds and doing all this. So I think it stands out and it gets exploited even further when someone like Triple H is front and center all the time. Because as we look at 2025, a lot of it hasn't been great. And we're coming off of a few good years. The 2022 stands out, 23, where you have good creative, arguably some of WWE's best storytelling, and maybe that was kind of him and creative all shooting out as much of their best ideas as possible, and that was the best they got. Not saying that they can't get to those heights again and do some really great creative, and there are good stories and characters and all of that right now, but the heights of, The Rock coming in with the WrestleMania moments with Cody finishing the story, doing the Bloodline story, the Bloodline saga for so long, and it hitting these newer and newer heights. They have never achieved that since. So then you can look at things happening in 2026 that I see as a fan going, I'm a little concerned with how they could pull this off and make this good and compelling. One, SmackDown is going to 3 hours. I'm not saying that that's a Triple H decision. It's TKO and it's USA Network. It's what they're deciding to do. But it is their responsibility to make it compelling, must-watch, must-see TV on a weekly basis. And I am not saying that that is an easy thing. Doing all of that television, all those stories, all those characters, that's got to be brutal. But I am saying that you are responsible for doing this. And you've done it for many years. You need to make it work and make it compelling. When the ratings for SmackDown are down and you're having some of the lowest periods for SmackDown's history in terms of ratings, you can always bounce back, but you're introducing another hour when that show, week after week, is not very compelling. The other issue under the Paul Levesque era regime and all that, I think, is your main event scene is getting old. The main event scene is very established. And with a lot of wrestlers and characters that are on the older side, it just means that you're going to need to replenish that with the younger stars, with your Trick Williams and your Obafemis and your Carmelo Hayes and so on, people that you need to try to get, Javon Evans, people you need to try to get to that main event level sooner rather than later and inject some fresh stories and ideas. And we don't see that with the Triple H era. Reliance on the old guard. It's not always a bad thing, but it does become a little bit of been there, done that. We've seen all of these combination of characters. It's time for something fresh. And on a positive, they have freshened up a lot of things like the men's United States title scene with Ilya being champion and showcasing a lot of talent. I think the women's tag division right now is doing some great stuff because you have so many established characters and established superstars that are in proper teams going for tag titles, and you have interwoven stories. And I think that is a big positive. But you're missing the big moments. And I don't know if they're willing to make corrections. Capitalize on Gunther. Make him an even bigger star. But when he goes out and does the press conferences and he has the reaction he does, it leaves a lot of bad taste in people's mouths. And I do wonder, will it carry over to TV? Will we see this like we have seen in the past under Vince, where crowds start rejecting what they're seeing? Do me a favor, drop your comments below of your thoughts on the John Cena finish. Number one, happy with it? What was the alternative options you should have seen? Is the criticism towards Triple H valid? And if you like videos like this, help us out, help us grow. We're trying to get to 50K subs if we can. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button on the video, guys. If you want to talk more WWE John Cena's retirement match, the full review is right here. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. See ya.